Looks like we're live. Right
Yeah,
on.
looks like we're live.
Welcome back, everybody. Episode 19, hitting that
Mm-hmm.
20 mark here pretty soon. A little bit late
Mm-hmm.
week this go round. That's how it be for us sometimes, man, with these semesters wrapping up regularly. But we still got it this week. Same thing. Everybody knows if you're just tuning in. We start with a conversation, take it where it leads us, end with some quotes. And yeah, so welcome back. How you doing, my man?
What's up, man? Nothing much. Got a lot going on. Obviously, as the semester's winding down, got a lot of last minute grading to consider. Um, you know, these grades um, they're not like a fly by the seat type of situation. When we're trying to um, focus on students' ability to write, it takes time to give them proper feedback. This isn't a multiple choice situation where I can just, run a Scantron through it. And my thing about the feedback is, it takes a while to properly reflect on their work and give them some type of criticism or critique so they can maybe brush up their writing skills. But I have been thinking as of lately, I'm, you know, I wonder if writing just gets phased out, becomes a bit too. I know it sounds weird for us to even consider that,
Yeah.
but man, some of their writing abilities are pretty limited already.
Yeah, it's definitely been declining significantly over the decade, a little over a decade that I've been kind of at it pretty heavily.
Hmm.
So I can see a big difference, particularly when it comes to rules and grammar. One student
Right.
once mentioned something to me when I made a comment about that in class. A good student, oddly, about it being sort of like a act of defiance of some sort, to refuse to um, capitalize things and whatnot, um, which is interesting. I never heard of that. It kind of took me aback, um, which may sound cool or whatever, but that doesn't change the fact that there are this code that we know and recognize as good and well mastered ability to communicate. Um, and I think you should be able to do that. But I don't know, man. I mean, it's a good question to have. This is what's interesting to me. Why is it that we've been doing this for so long, hurting ourselves? We get paid the same. If we just decided to do a 5 minute uh, Scantron, boom, we would save hours of our lives and we would lose
Right.
zero money. So we would actually gain. So we're doing something that's a deep hindrance for us personally. But why do we do that?
Right.
I wonder.
Oh, I mean, yeah, for sure. This doesn't help us. It's not advantageous for our like mental well-being, our psyche. Definitely doesn't benefit us economically to go about our business this way. I know for me, it gives to me this component of the course where you allow a student to express themselves in written form uh, with a great deal of time to construct perspective, an argument, develop, a sense of their own writing style, whatever. To me, it just gives more value to the profession when we do that, at least from my perspective. Um, it 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 gives it makes me feel uh, that the gig is worth it. Like I wouldn't want to have a class where we didn't uh, push or challenge the students to um, develop their written abilities or skills. And we try to do it in a historical fashion where we give them a choice to pick a document to analyze, something that we hope that might spark their interest. And that if they
This is
read the
interesting.
work of others, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. You use that word gig, and maybe the reason is that it's not a gig. Let me give you an example, because like
Mm.
I was thinking, if I went and got a gig making $15 an hour, and use all the hours I spend grading papers there,
Mm-hmm.
I'd have several $1,000s extra a year, I think.
Yeah.
Uh, just at $15 an hour, which is,
Mm-hmm.
think of it that way. So to me, I don't know. I've been coming back to this question, and we've talked about it a good hinted around it at earliest episodes about what is a revolutionary and what does it mean to think of things in revolutionary terms. What I think that an element to that. Again, there's a lot of things I think that go into it, and maybe we can talk about it if we go that way. But one of them, one component, I think, is doing something, a craft in your life, um, not for the money, not because it's a gig. Everybody's got gigs and we got to hustle here and there. But then you
Mm-hmm.
also got like obsession or drive or passion or desire, to focus in this one particular path. Um, and maybe some people put themselves through extra work in the things that they do because they know that's what needs to be done to be successful. And we want and care so much about students being successful that we show you the path. We can't make you. Sometimes you got to take it over and over again. Uh,
Yeah.
Sometimes you got to grow up. Sometimes you got to start focusing. Sometimes you got to flunk and then come back and then start looking at things in a different angle. But we want to always have it there for you so that once you do start zeroing in, this is the path that's going to make you a better person, a better communicator, a better scholar, a better critical thinker, much more aware of your surroundings, and have a stronger capacity to make judgments about things going on around you, which I think is important.
For sure. Yeah. And they'll get a lot of that. I mean, just out of our lecture, out of discussion or debate that we might even hold in class. These are writing assignments or opportunities for them to, again, develop their own voice on a subject or an issue and learning how to um, develop, edit, write, rewrite um, a perspective. And I talked to a bunch of my students about how more than ever, this generation has been afforded opportunities to not only create narratives, curate perspectives, um, that they can find themselves in pockets of individual or in communities because the internet, everything's online, where they can uh, reach individuals that they never could before. And that's why it's imperative that these narratives that they're crafting are put together well, that they're critiqued, that they're critical, and that we're critical of them. So that way they are stronger when they try to present perspectives later. I think if they're not speaking up for themselves by way of these opportunities or on other platforms, then other people are going to create the narratives for them. Um,
Yeah,
we were discussing it in my history class as to why there was such a thing like the Freedom's Journal, right? And I introduced it in my class, as the first Black newspaper in America. And we talk about, well, why do they even need to have one? Well, because the current narrative, predominantly written by well-to-do white men, probably painted them in a light that was, not advantageous to their safety, their intelligence, their community, not reflective of their values. Obviously, if you're talking about a community you see it as a second-class citizen or less than human, you're probably not going to get a great spin of the narrative. And so
Yeah, man.
so what do? They take control of that opportunity or situation to tell their story. And now more than ever, because of technology, this is what I think is hurting a bit. I Maybe because of these various outlets, they don't see a need to write anymore because they can get on a podcast, they can
Yeah,
go to YouTube, they can spin their narrative using a platform like Twitter, and that long form writing may not be necessary anymore. I mean, I don't know if they're even reading articles anymore. I know they glance at them. I know they might read the first page or so to get a quick summary of it, but I don't know if they actually are reading, um, writing in that capacity.
yeah. What you said about taking control of your own narrative reminded me of an old Khan proverb where he says, like, until lions have their hunters, the tale of the hunt will always be told by the hunter.
Mhm.
And I think that fits very well with what you meant about narrative. Take back the narrative, control the narrative. And I think everything that you said fits perfectly with our primary source analysis writing assignment. But with an OTE or whatever you call them, where they actually sit down with a blue book and write, there's something else to this piece that we're missing, which is vital. And it goes back to what I was saying about showing you the path on how to best be successful. There's no skill more valuable and more uh, masterful in terms of helping you understand the content than being forced to study on a regular basis for a month or two and then come and sit down and write what is in your brain in response to a question about the content that you've been given,
For sure.
because clear writing reflects clear thinking reflects clear preparation and diligence.
Mhm.
And this is why I like to say, yeah, what you said a little bit earlier, they get that in our lectures. But this is why I try to tell these students, man, that entertainment and knowledge and learning is two different things, man. If you come up in here and you're so concerned with being entertained that you're listening and you're watching and you're maybe even paying attention, um, hearing, but listening and absorbing is something different. You have to put that information down on paper in your own words, and then you have to revisit those words regularly, constantly. And then if you come and are put into a room and have to write what you know about that stuff that you've been preparing in your mind for a month or two, if you can master doing that, you can master anything. You can
For sure.
master any subject if you do it just like this. Um, Force yourself to write it down. If you can get into a practice of journaling where every day you sit down and you write um, thoughts that you've been thinking about, you'll get better at it as well. These are things that I think are very valuable. And whether or not, you know, instead of practical, I don't know what the word is, it's not as useful in the transition, I guess, that people are going towards in the society. I don't know, man. Even if we do transition, there are some skills that will never uh, go out of style.
I agree. It's just I agree, again, I implore them to figure out whatever medium they can obviously have access to, but control and and use to, again, stress their voice, to create and control their own narrative. That's revolutionary. You know, as you were talking about uh, um, revolutionary thought in general.
Yeah,
Well,
for
if you
sure.
can't express that thought, then what are you? Now, again, understanding the times is important. And as technology is, changing like exponentially with this generation, and it's impacting this generation. Um, I always think writing is going to be around. I wonder in what capacity, though. Is it necessary? I mean, I've read articles where there are typos, and there are this, there are a bunch of stuff. Um, I just wonder how this generation values writing in general. I don't
Look,
think they
look,
do, man.
there has never been a civilization in world history that has existed without writing. So I would deeply caution the next generation to remember that civilization and writing are intricately
Essential.
connected.
Hmm.
They're
Right.
not mutually exclusive. They have belonged together. There was no such thing as anything referred to as a civilization before that civilization communicated in a form of writing, and it's evolved, and the language has changed. Um, but that mastering as many forms of that system as possible is one of the strongest things a human can do. The more languages you learn, the
Right.
more abilities you write, uh, the more successful you'll be, the more ability you'll have to be able to navigate into different areas of the world. Um, so I don't know. Maybe though that's because of my personality in terms of thinking about things sometimes in revolutionary thought. I guess which brings me back to this question of what the hell is a revolutionary? Does
I
it have
mean, I think this generation is living in somewhat of a revolutionary time, and again, I think a lot of that is because of the exponentially ever changing face of technology with
much
computers and
different,
whatnot.
right? A revolutionary time would be a term used much differently than like the term, a revolution, right? You're thinking of like newness, transformation. Um, but I don't know. To be a revolutionary to me, or is a little different than that. I think there's some aspect of like embracing some newness, but it's also like a mindset about things, how you approach things. Like, so the reason it's been on my mind a lot lately because in 1301, 1302, there's the only two classes that I'm lecturing over, two of each this semester. And I was talking about Fred Hampton at the same time as I was in 1302, as I was talking about John Brown in 1301.
Hmm.
And both of those classes, our conversation zeroed in on are these guys revolutionaries? Um, and I would have to agree that they were. And I think the reason being is because they had this unwavering commitment to some idea that they put everything that they had into. They did
Hmm.
all this stuff that they didn't get the extra money for. They had no gigs.
Oh, I
these,
see. Hmm.
these fools had, a one-track way of life mind. About obviously, I think there are a lot more in history. Maybe not a lot more. I don't know. It's hard to say. I would say Malcolm X is much more of a revolutionary than Martin Luther King was, for reasons maybe. Um, I don't know. I'd have to study more. I've read biographies on Malcolm, not on Martin Luther King, but Malcolm didn't didn't own anything, didn't purchase anything, didn't care about material things, as opposed to Martin Luther King, I think, was very much into all that stuff. So there's this strong sense of self-sacrifice, lack of focus on anything. I don't know. Think about it a little bit more. What do you think?
For sure. I mean, what you're identifying definitely is a headspace. You're identifying characteristics or traits of individuals you see as revolutionary, and I would agree that Fred Hampton was a revolutionary. And I think you add something that I want to agree with, in that you talk about how this, and this is your definition of a revolutionary, like their mindset is I don't want to say it's one track, but they're so driven towards this one thing. They're very invested, obviously, right? And that all other, I guess, material elements of the world take a back seat to their revolutionary goal. And their headspace affords them the ability to do that, where they're driven by their passion to accomplish, that end, whatever that end is. Now, I also want to, and I when I look at a revolutionary, though, I don't simply think like it's not necessarily. They definitely have to have a headspace in order to execute their plans, for sure. To be thoroughly invested like John Brown was, or Fred Hampton was for the Black Panther Party. John Brown, an extreme abolitionist. But I think what makes them revolutionary, though, is that they're not representative of the masses or majority. So like there's only one Fred Hampton. There's only one John Brown. There's only one Malcolm X. And I would put Dr. King in that revolutionary conversation for sure. I have a stronger appreciation for Dr. King as of lately. I know early in my career I was, in a haze of Malcolm, but no, I mean, I think they're not built like everyone, and so not everybody can be a revolutionary. We can live in revolutionary times, but only a few in that time have that nature that I think you're talking about, that headspace that you're talking about, that sense of self, to know that in order to accomplish this goal, I have to be deeply dedicated to.
But here's the thing. This is not something that you're born with. It's something that can occur randomly. That's what's odd about it. It's this is why we're having such a hard time with the definition, because it's going to be something very difficult to define without a paragraph. But William Wallace was a revolutionary, and he didn't become one until a catastrophic event turned him into one. Same thing with Emilio Zapata. Vladimir Lenin was definitely a revolutionary, and he became one the day that he saw his brother executed. There are like big events, maybe sometimes, that people get. Maybe the circumstance matters. I think where you encounter an experience and the effect that this experience has on you, the context of that experience, the nature of it, all of these different things have to align, I think, to get someone committed enough to do this, but anyone can do it. That's what's interesting. I think anyone can get their mind in a state to become focused on a goal. It may be difficult, and the farther away you are from doing it, maybe the more practice that you're going to need to do before you catch on, uh, and get almost addicted to some
No, it has
cause.
to be.
You got to be
It's it.
into this cause, which kind of why it's like I hesitate. The word fanatic. What's the difference between a revolutionary and a fanatic? Or is a revolutionary have to be a fanatic of some sort? Is a sub term below belonging to the term revolutionary, or is a revolutionary take it that far?
I mean, they could be a fanatic. Again, the revolutionary is probably a fanatic because it requires a deeply rooted dedication to a cause. And so, if you're deeply dedicated to or are a fan of something, well, then by definition, you would be a fanatic because you're deeply you're almost. It's tough because I think fanatics might be blinded
This is
by their deep devotion. There's a in the movie Malcolm X. In the movie Malcolm X,
yeah,
Betty is having a conversation with Malcolm, and
Malcolm's wife.
it's I'm sorry,
Malcolm's wife was having a
conversation with Malcolm
yeah.
about the rumors that were swirling regarding Elijah Muhammad and his affairs with young girls within the nation. And she goes, "Are you so dedicated that you are blind to the dangers that surround us? Not just you, but our family, things like that." And
Yeah.
I think that at
If
times these
you are,
fanatics,
the answer is yes. That's a fanatic.
right?
If the answer
Not
to
all revolutionaries are blind.
right. In fact, I would go so far as to say you can't be blind and be a revolutionary. This is why Stalin was not a revolutionary. This is why I don't know others who maybe I would go so far as to say that Fidel Castro is not a revolutionary. Maybe he started out as one.
He
But
started out as one.
too blind. He didn't see his corrupt power taking over. He kept justifying things. Putin is not a revolutionary. Um,
I
people who
think I think if you lose sight of reality, I'm not sure if you could be a revolutionary. And this would put John Brown in a situation then.
I don't think so.
If
I
he
think
thought that it was realistic to go to a fort. Okay, a fort is a place with weapons and there are guards at that fort. And he thought that he could go to a fort where there are trained individuals who are drilled in military. Thought he could take weapons and then give them to slaves so that they could fight for their freedom. If he thought that that was a sane, realistic approach, I mean, I would probably put him under a fanatic.
okay. The last words of his life, um, I think, describe what he thought when he did that. What he thought when he did that was that these actions would end slavery, and they
Yeah,
did.
he.
They
I'm
did.
not sure if his actions
They
did.
did. He woke up on his deathbed. The last thing he said, "Mark my words, in less than a year, this country is going to be torn asunder over the issue of slavery that we started right now. It's not going to go away." And less than a year, Abraham Lincoln was elected president. South seceded from the Union. From the day that John Brown did what he did, there wasn't a week that went by without slavery being the number one thing on everybody's mind. People were
Mm-hmm.
eulogizing him in the North. People were galvanizing that. They were calling him a
For sure.
disgusting terrorist in the South. The split just became so powerful. And so I think maybe John Brown on some level knew that he was going to die when he did what he did, in the same way that Malcolm X knew quite clearly that he was going to die, that he was a dead man walking, as he quoted as saying multiple times after coming out and speaking uh, about this fanatic who was in charge of the religion that had brainwashed him. I don't think he was a revolutionary until at that point. That was Malcolm's moment to transcend um, the herd mentality and rise to the level of a revolutionary. He went off and made his own organization. He had his own theory, his own philosophy. Would have had his own book. Probably had everything if he lived just a decade longer. Um, but that was his point. And maybe he was a revolutionary already at that point, in a sense that there was no way that he could have not did what he did, because he just couldn't stay silent about problems regardless of where those problems came from. And that is a tendency of a revolutionary. But I think the moment he made that decision to break from the nation is when he enshrined himself as a revolutionary.
Yeah, the break was necessary for sure. You know, even in his eulogy, um, Ozzie Davis um, hinted at and used the word that some revered Malcolm as a fanatic, a racist, a hate monger. So I think those, you know, maybe what makes you a revolutionary, um, it doesn't require. I mean, no revolutionary seeks out these labels, right? I want to be a fanatic. You just are, or you're
Yeah.
perceived as such. I think most revolutionaries have a um, they have mixed reviews, and what I mean by that is 50% of the people love you, and then the other 50% they actually despise and hate you.
Mm-hmm.
Those might be your true revolutionaries, individuals where you can't really pinpoint um you can't really check their temperature. They're so um I'm trying to they're so mercurial, not mercurial, but just like they're you can't, and they're almost untouchable to a degree. Like it's like um like a real revolutionary might, you know, rub everybody the wrong way. That's who that their presence or their essence is. Like they're loved and or beloved, and they're probably hated equally. When I think about Castro, I think that he's loved and hated. When I think about
Too.
hmm,
At different times too, he was loved by the mass majority at the
hmm,
beginning, and then slowly lost it. That's another problem. Is you have to be able to adapt. One of the other qualities or characteristics of a revolutionary has to be some sort of self-sacrifice for the benefit of another. This is why I think that lady I met who came and talked to me, talked at my class about veganism,
hmm,
is revolutionary. Um, People who, if you have some other person or soul or whatever you want to focus on, that you give up so much comfort for yourself to have. That's why, again, I just I don't know much about Martin Luther King's private life. But you can't be a
Well,
revolutionary, I think, if you're buying all the fanciest stuff and uh,
well,
spending all the time chasing this and chasing that.
he did die, for the most part, penniless.
He died
And
what?
none
I'm
of
sorry.
he didn't. I mean, he died practically broke. Like they didn't. He had no money when he died.
Really?
Much of the money that he made from speaking engagements. He never collected a check from anyone. He wasn't. He wasn't.
Wife and
Uh,
kids didn't have it good. I don't know.
no, I don't think. No, I mean, don't get me wrong. After his assassination,
Yeah,
you
certainly.
could imagine there's going to be a great deal of support throughout the United States, around the world,
Right.
to look after the kids, to look
No
after
documents,
Coretta.
but I know these Baptist ministers sometimes be getting big time salaries and shit like that. That's why I
Not
don't know.
yeah, not King.
But
No,
I know.
not.
What I do know is that Malcolm owned nothing.
He definitely
Malcolm
died poor.
had no money. Nobody paid
Right.
him. They just paid for
No.
him to do everything, and he just went and did
Right.
it all.
Right.
Uh, that that a lot of people don't realize that. Like you try to get somebody to do some shit, man. Half the times, like, well, what's it? Where's my cut? Where's my this? Where's
For
my
sure.
that? And you got to be so committed to something uh, to be able to do that. And I think it got masked a lot because of the black nationalism. But he was a staunch um, utopian socialist. Or genuine communist, I think, in the sense of the word, when it comes to self-sacrifice for,
A
um,
greater good.
yeah, I mean, this guy was on it, and I think Fred Hampton knew that about Malcolm, and he studied everything about his speech patterns and listened to him over and over again, and mimicked him quite a bit. Um,
Oh yeah, I'd imagine so.
and then I think
Um,
living through King's assassination as well, I think even made him stronger of a revolutionary than Malcolm was, because he got to leave off where Malcolm was, and then he saw the nonviolent resistance movement just get literally assassinated. Um, so he becomes even more revolutionary.
yeah, I mean these individuals, and for sure Fred Hampton is revolutionary. I mean, yeah, their dedication ultimately at their own expense to their own demise. Um, are they fanatics? Um, I maybe they are, and you do
Well, I
have
was
to be
like
a bit
uh,
mad.
fanatics as in terms of a noun, but they have fanatics in terms of an adjective. They have fanatic beliefs in certain dimensions. But to call someone a fanatic as a noun, uh, I think, is more of a is diverting away from a revolutionary,
Mm,
right? So you can be fanatical about something, but you're wise enough to curb it once it becomes a problem. Fanatics as a noun aren't capable of doing that.
right, they
They
can't
follow,
control.
yeah, they follow something blindly without ever falling off the cliff. And I think what you brought up about John Brown maybe seems that way because of the way he died and his cause, but I think he did what he did knowing that he was going to die and knowing that that was necessary. That action had to be the spark that got the ball rolling to end slavery. Before then,
Mm,
all this talk, Supreme Court this, nullification that, you know, Wilmot proviso this, compromise that, uh, Nebraska this, Nebraska. I mean, in Nebraska, he started chopping people up. He
yeah,
knew
he was
back then,
there. Yeah.
right? For him, it began then. It's over with, and it took a little bit more time to calculate what needed to be done. That didn't help. So this maybe would. Let me attack this federal arsenal right here in the heart of the Jim Crow, what will become the Jim Crow South.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember one Civil War historian. I could be misspeaking, but this one historian making reference to um, John Brown being the most influential individual leading up to the Civil War, uh, and for the development of the Confederate military. His argument was that after that attack or failed attack, um, state militias began developing
Mm-hmm.
um, to protect themselves in the event that there was going to be a threat towards the institution of slavery.
Exactly.
And so they began
Combative
training, and
people,
these
brain
these militias would ultimately turn into
vigilante.
the Confederate Army.
Yeah. And then
This regiment of Tennessee, this regiment of belonging to this guy, But anyways, yeah. I also, on top of, I think there are revolutionary times too. On top of an individual, I think there can be a moment that seems somewhat revolutionary. I
yeah.
know in class, I'm not sure if you do it. In my class, we discuss something in the early 1830s or so, the information revolution, where more and more Americans are reading.
Literacy. Yeah.
Uh, right, and that America turns into the most literate nation in the world around that time. And I make a parallel in that, it's revolution. You're living in revolutionary times where an event has the capacity to alter almost every phase or sector of society, economically, politically, socially. We are seeing the effects of this information revolution, and that's why this technological revolution, or this time, seems like a revolutionary time for young people in technology. Now, as to who, and here's another thing. Would you consider Elon Musk a revolutionary?
No.
And so can
Absolutely.
you only be revolutionary in a social sense?
No, it's an all-encompassing term. Um, it would require. I mean, a lot of what I said about Malcolm had to do with economics instead of social. Political is also part of it. When it comes to Fred Hampton, it could be various dimensions. I do not think um, Elon Musk is a revolutionary because I don't think he sacrifices enough
Mm.
proportionately to what he has
Okay.
to be considered someone who's really in it for revolutionary purposes. I think he's self-aggrandizing a little bit. I think he's megalomaniac, and many revolutionaries start out that way, like Castro was. I think he is more preoccupied with being the best, the richest, the most successful, and I don't think
Mm.
that that could qualify you to be a revolutionary.
I think maybe the confusion that could be had for many to see Musk as a revolutionary would be that in revolutionaries and these egomaniacs, you're going to find similar characteristic traits,
Yeah,
right? So
right, definitely.
this
Have
drive,
some
this
quality.
deep drive, and just
Right,
because they both have deep drives doesn't mean they're both revolutionary.
right,
It just means that they're both driven
right,
deeply.
right.
But if they're not in, so to make sure that we're clear on this definition, if they are not, um, um, and to a degree, martyring themselves to the cause, they cannot be revolutionary.
Right. Uh,
And could you make an argument that, I don't know. I don't know what this man's cause is then. Well, could you make an argument that he does martyr his potential popularity, his economic empire? Um,
Harder how? He makes money off
uh,
that. everything he does. He makes
To a
tremendous
degree,
money.
to a degree. However, he did purchase Twitter,
Yeah, I
and
mean,
it lost 22 billion immediately.
well, right now, but
Right.
people like Musk ain't in it for doubling his profit next week or next year. Look at the information he now controls over how many people that he'll be able to use 10, 20 years down the road. Like he can read everybody's DMs now. He has control over everything. The value of that information, he's got so many hundreds of billions of dollars to drop 50 billion on access and control over that much is worth
20
it,
years ago, Twitter didn't exist.
right?
So, you know, the exponentially ever evolving, changing nature of technology is revolutionary in that the things that we have today didn't exist 10 years ago, and they forever altered the way in which we interact, politics, our economy, everything's
You know what?
digital.
This is interesting. Let me talk about this here because there is this ambiguity in this term. We keep talking about what is a revolution, what does it mean to be a revolutionary, and then revolutionary times. It's interesting to look at the history of the word revolution. I
Mhm.
studied this for my PhD. One of my areas of studies was like revolutions and transformations, intercultural transfer, and the African diaspora. I had to read a bunch of books for each of these, and then 3 days in a row, sit in a room for 8 hours and write on a computer with just the computer a response to what a professor said or what a paragraph that they asked me. And then they had to read it a couple months, go back, and I had to go defend it. And I had to read a bunch of this stuff by all these like Christopher Hill, Crane Britton, all these like scholars who've written shit about revolutions. And what was it I found interesting was, prior to the French Revolution, the word revolution itself meant to revolve backwards, to go back to something that has been lost. It had nothing to do with newness. The Americans, for example, and Edmund Burke and all these people who were like writing the philosophy of what the Americans were doing against the British, it was to regain their rights as Englishmen that had been taken away, to revolve
Mhm.
back to the good old days. Um,
Mhm.
and then what happened is this American independence movement set off a chain of reaction of others all throughout the Atlantic world. And by the time it got to France, what it did was toppled the entire government with something entirely new. Lower class people who had no power or authority and belonged to the third estate just took over the government. Then they abolished slavery. Then they chop off the heads of the kings and start killing all of the aristocrats. And then afterwards, when people started trying to talk about that, with Marx a couple decades later analyzing it, they started using the term revolution as completely transformative, something that topples
Mhm.
an ancient regime into something new.
Mhm.
And now, when capitalism emerges, which decidingly, the United States is decidingly the least revolutionary country ever to exist. You could argue we never really had a revolution. The same people who were in charge before the independence movement were the same ones charged afterwards. They just called themselves something different. But they black market stole shit beforehand. Afterwards, they made it legal for them to make those transactions amongst themselves. It was the same system. But then we start commodifying things, and then all of a sudden in the United States now everything's revolutionary.
Right.
A new revolutionary iPhone, or a new
Mhm.
revolutionary driving car, or it's weird how we've sort of taken this word, flipped its meaning, maybe to even subvert it and hide it and prevent it. We talk about these little bitty revolutionary things.
Thomas Jefferson referred to his election as a revolution in
Yeah,
1800.
because it was so transformative, this big switch of power. Yeah, absolutely. Um,
We're in love with the word, that's for sure, because it gives off the impression that there is dramatic change taking place. And maybe that gives us a sense
Like we
of,
use the word liberty and freedom when we're enslaving others, or
right. Well, I know at times, oh, for example, the word democracy, right? You hear it a
yeah,
lot,
right,
but we don't have a democracy.
right.
So why do we have that? Well, the argument was that the word was used to give the impression that you have some semblance of power when in reality you don't. But if I say the word and you hear it enough and it's brought up in conversation, you'll think that it exists and that you have a say. Um, it's a facade of sorts, which is why um, 20th century thinkers would refer to the United States as the most fascist nation in the world, because that is the facade of freedom. You think you're free, in reality you're not. That is fascism. um, um, and it's like when I talk to my daughter, my little girl, she thinks she has a room in my house, but she thinks she has a room, but I only say she has a room when I want her to clean it. She only has a bathroom when I want her to clean her bathroom. Outside of that, that's my room. That's my bathroom. This is my house. But I give her the impression that she has some sense of space. And I think that if you give people that sense of space, even if it's not real, if you give them the idea of that, then they're less likely to um, revolt. So I
Mm.
mean, maybe that's why we use the word democracy. Now, in regards to this notion of revolution, are we misusing it, or is it being misused with intent? Because America likes to throw that word around.
Yeah,
Maybe we would like to throw that word around because we want to feel like we're important, and so that everything we do is revolutionary.
yeah. I think it's like in a sense, it's like double speak in a way,
Mm-hmm.
where
It's a con.
yeah, you reference it and embrace a muddled version of it to protect from it actually um, occurring.
Hmm.
It reminds me of the Gil Scott Heron song, "The Revolution Will Not Be Televised," right? And it's
Mm-hmm.
like it won't be brought to you by Xerox. Yeah, it's not gonna be on the. You're gonna have to leave your homes, and it's like you see all this stuff out here. They like to highlight it, divert your attention from it, but it's not gonna. You're not
what
gonna
about
be able.
what,
To,
what about this? Do you think Julian Assange is a revolutionary?
maybe I don't know enough about them. It's too early to tell. Um, it could be. There's a potential there for that to occur. I would need to know more. Obviously, it's difficult to. Same thing with like,
He's still in prison.
yeah. I mean, we go ahead and assume that Nat Turner was a revolutionary, but we don't know how he lived his life. We don't know what he did on a daily basis. We see this act that was so profound and hear this whispering about it that we're assuming he was a revolutionary. I would say, yeah. Uh, Assange, maybe. You could assume that, but you would need to be careful, I think, because there's a lot of assumptions. I mean, isn't he in? Uh, wasn't there's like some sexual allegations? I don't know what's up with that. If they lied about it to get him into
Right.
it, but hard to say, man. It's very hard to say. I would say Alexei Navalny uh, also could be a revolution, but I don't know. It's hard to say.
Well,
Um,
I again remember when I was making reference to that. You can't check their temperature, because half of the people are saying this, the other half of people are saying that.
right,
Half of people are saying Assange is a terrorist, that he is aiding and abetting individuals to bring harm to American soldiers by leaking government information.
right.
you can get a lot of people killed is the argument. But his argument is that no, more people need to be aware of these type of dealings so that maybe we can hold our governments accountable and not get engaged in, these armed conflicts that may not be necessary, like the war in Iraq, the war in Afghanistan. Like Edward Snowden. Would Edward Snowden be considered a revolutionary?
Hard to say as
Gave up
well.
his life.
Well,
Worked for NSA.
he got asylum in Russia, right? So we don't know what was going
No,
on there.
we don't know what that brother's doing. He ain't.
Yeah,
But
I'm saying we don't know.
I'll tell you this:
be some kind of like con job between them going on. We don't know. I just don't know. But I'm not.
I'll tell you this: he was living comfortably in the United States.
Yeah,
I'm sure.
Now Putin maybe let him live comfortably in the airport or wherever it was that he was chilling in.
Well, I don't know. Anywhere in Russia doesn't seem comfortable. I don't know. It can't be as comfortable as the United States.
I tell you, if you're looking for customer service, you ain't getting it. That's not the spot. Oh my God, I got some stories for you about that in Russia. But I don't know. Too hard to say. Reminds me of that conversation, that footage of Fred Hampton that you and I were studying before we did that that thing together about the movie or whatever.
Right. Well, when Fred Hampton said, we'll have to see about that in regards to Papa Dot.
Yeah.
Is Papa Dot a revolutionary? Was
he's not a revolution. He's Jomo Kenyatta is an ex-revolutionary, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not a non-revolutionary. He's an ex-revolutionary. It means he was revolutionary and then he went the wrong direction. Same thing with Papa Dot, right?
Right. Wondering about Gaddafi. Time will tell.
Same with Gaddafi. You transformed this thing. You were fighting for Pan-African unity. You did all this stuff, but then you let all this power get to your head and you do all this nonsense. That Fred was doing, because he was a real revolutionary.
Well, now here's what's interesting. And they didn't live long enough to see themselves become the villain.
Right.
So the phrase is either you die a hero, and in this case, either you die a revolutionary, or you live long enough to see yourself no longer be revolutionary.
Usually, but not necessarily, I would say. So
I mean, give me a revolutionary that lived long.
There are a few. The older you live, the harder it is to continue to maintain that revolutionary aspect. But there are literally thousands of, I would consider, revolutionaries who were part of the hippie movement in the United States. And when they saw the direction of the commercialization of it all, they left and now they're living in the Ganges River, still practicing their revolutionary beliefs. I would say there were Mother Jones was a revolutionary, and she lived a very long time. There were what is her name? She's a Russian.
But the individuals that we've spoke of, Malcolm.
Yes, this is why the vast majority will, because
he died in a year, less than a year, from his revolutionary moment that you would argue began shortly after leaving the nation. Fred Hampton was 21.
Yeah, he was 21.
Nipsey Hussle was what? Tupac was what?
Actually older, in his 30s.
Biggie was what? And my point in bringing this up is, a lot of times, I'll have conversations with friends about the greatest rappers of all time, top 5 dead or alive or whatever. And one of the arguments against somebody like Biggie was that he wasn't around long enough. His catalog wasn't deep enough to determine whether or not if he was going to turn into some corny rapper in the end game, because their life was cut short. King was cut short. X was cut short. John Brown was cut short. When John Brown started getting revolutionary, that brother lasted T-10, and his boys died too.
Yeah.
In that event. many of these revolutionaries ultimately their shelf life isn't long.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, more than many, majority, because
And
it's
that
a
gives
dangerous job.
them,
It's just
I
like,
don't want to say
uh,
it gives them like an easy way out, but
well, it's like this. It doesn't mean because it's like that. It doesn't mean that they wouldn't have necessarily maintained their revolutionary status if they lived. Um, it's like you can see the same thing with like being a crab fisher is a dangerous job. They die early. There are jobs that are dangerous that you die early, and there are many of them who feign revolutionariness to gain power and then enact their plan when they get that power, because the fact of the matter is being a revolutionary is infectious. Is a way to get power and get followers. And so there are a lot of people who are going to pretend like they are, and you may think they are, but they're really not. And the ones who really are, and live long enough to stay, you don't hear about them.
let me ask you this.
Yeah,
Do you think that Trump is perceived as a revolutionary?
it could be by some fanatics, I'm sure. Yeah, he's a good example of one of these con artists who know how to talk, to pull at the strings of fanatics, who feel like they're under attack. He speaks for a lot of people, but he sure as ain't no revolutionary. Maybe have an old airplane flying around the whole country calling yourself no revolutionary. Boy, you better get out of here with that nonsense. Yeah, I'm go so far. You can't even have AC in your car these days, if you want to call yourself revolutionary. Oh man.
They definitely are cut from a different cloth. I'll say that.
Yeah, some sort
Every
of.
every everybody that I look up to as a revolutionary was definitely, you know, there could be a multitude of individuals that look at Che Guevara and say he's not a revolutionary, he's a murderer. Um, I still look at him as a revolutionary.
Yeah, that's
I
not.
just,
What do you mean
I,
by a murderer? I mean, a murderer by murder is legally defined as killing somebody with particular intent and purpose in a uh, in a law established society. He killed people uh, in a war, in a fight. Um,
mm,
you best believe if somebody come over here and mess with my stuff, I'm gonna kill a lot of people if I got to. Uh, some people you got to sacrifice to win, and if you're gonna go out there and try to overthrow a government, shit, you best believe a lot of people are gonna die. But it
mm-hmm.
wasn't out there just bringing people in and killing them for the sake of his own gain or power, or I'm gonna go murder this dude to steal his car or something like
Yeah,
that.
more often than not, I wouldn't imagine it was for his own aggrandizement or for him to have a position or stature. As a matter of fact, that's one of the reasons why he might be the most revolutionary individual. In that, shortly after that Cuban Revolution, he leaves Cuba,
Yeah, he was
and he
definitely
goes, he's
100%.
in Bolivia.
Yeah,
He's in parts of Latin America trying to revolutionize and continue that string of revolutionary action until he's obviously going to be assassinated too.
right. And the thing
Um,
is it's highly skewed as well. There are a lot of revolutionaries. One thing that is not a requirement in terms of being a revolutionary is popularity, which means there are a lot of revolutionaries who nobody knows about.
mhm,
When Jerry, Deborah, formerly known as Deborah Johnson, who was pregnant with Fred Hampton's
mhm.
son, I would consider her a revolutionary. Um, uh, Fannie Lou Hamer, I would consider a revolutionary. She lived pretty well, long until she died
Mhm.
of disease. Um, I think it just so happens that a lot of them do end up dying because it's a dangerous job. like I said. But they're out there, man. They're definitely out there. And sometimes they mask themselves. They hide. They pull some Bruce Wayne type stuff, right? I
What do you
mean,
mean?
Bruce Wayne was a revolutionary. He had to make himself look like this. Of course, we're talking about a fictional character, obviously, but he had to make himself spend and do all this stuff to hide his work that he was doing, right? And so sometimes, if you're doing something for a particular play, you may.
At first, at, at first, I thought you said John Wayne. I was like, what
Oh,
motherfucker?
hell no. Funny.
But it's when you said John Wayne, I was like, what did he do revolutionary? But anyways, yeah, for sure, Bruce Wayne. Yeah, even though it's fictional. I mean, but that's the intrigue of an individual like Bruce, is that he's not normal.
Right.
He is the anomaly.
Right.
Revolutionaries are not every day.
Yeah, that's true.
Not everybody can do or be revolutionary. We're talking about a very few that have a compass, that their constitution is dedicated to a particular goal that they're willing to almost achieve by any means necessary.
And so you bring that all the way back to what we started this conversation with when it comes to grading. I see the students who made A's in my class, those who put the self-sacrifice in to take on the quality of a revolutionary for this course. You got it. And not everybody's going to do it. That's guaranteed. In a class of 30 people, I may have 2 to 5, 6, maybe 7, 8 to 20% of the students who are going to really do what is necessary. They all could.
Right.
They all could. In fact, some of them flunk and come back and do great. Right. When they learn the path. Some of them already know the path when they get there. Some of them learn the path through the journey, and they're determined. I got students who are very determined, and they come in there all the time. When what do you think they're doing? Like they're putting in. You're training your mind to focus on something hard enough to put your sacrifice something, to put your comfort or your TV time or this time or something away and master this material. Takes effort and work and becoming part of these qualities that are revolutionary.
Yeah. Not everybody can, that's for sure. But they have the opportunity.
Yeah. Everybody
it's
can, everybody will. I guess that's
and maybe like you said, there usually are these moments that spark or create the revolutionary. And maybe what they need is a certain lecture. They need a certain messenger. They need they need a certain failure to set them straight. Who knows?
And
we're about that time though.
That's what day one is in our class. It's people are, wow, I like this, and getting them excited. And all right, now you're excited. What are you going to do with that excitement? Where are you going to take it? Everybody can get in. That's the difference between the entertainment and pursuing the path that we've been describing here. You can take that inspiration, channel it, focus it, drive it, persist with it, sweat over it, work it, and then you can do it. But what's the problem is most of these mugs in our situation, or from our perspective, they don't even give them the path. They just come up in that mug, boring them to death. They ain't even got a chance. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I know it. I know it.
Oh man! All right, man. Well, let's see. I don't know. I haven't really looked at many quotes, but the one that keeps coming to my head is Fred Hampton saying over and over again, "I am a revolutionary."
Yeah,
in
for
that,
sure.
in that in that speech that he was given. Um,
Or you gotta have an X quote.
you got one?
Yeah, we gotta use the proper X quote.
Go for it.
I mean, it's one that everybody knows. Let me see right here. If I can pull it up. It's we declare our right on this earth to be a man, to be a human being, to be respected as a human being, to be given the rights of a human being in this society, on this day, on this earth, which we intend to bring into existence by any means necessary.
Nice.
That's the quote. If you're dedicated, you're going to make it happen. You're going to find a way. And the drive is there, you know, as to what that catalyst is different for everybody.
Yeah, let me add one more. I wish I would have thought about this more. Time kind of escaped us, but there's a good Bob Marley quote. I can't remember the name of the song. Maybe Small Axe, but it's the hook of that song. It says, "If you are a big tree, then we are a small axe, ready to chop you down."
That's
and
cool.
Yeah, and so it's sort of like just slowly. It reminds me of a revolutionary who I would say Bob Marley was. You slowly chipping away, chopping down this enormous tree, which can seem like an insurmountable task, yet you keep swinging, which is what the revolutionary does.
Yeah. Because it implies that against all odds, against this insurmountable force,
Right.
I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to find a way. So
Battling oppression at some point is also, maybe we got to continue that conversation another time too, to be continued. But yeah, that's a good stopping point.
which one's that?
That
Talking about
idea.
this one?
Yeah, because I'm thinking more too about facing oppression as well, as a requirement of some sort. But anyway, we'll get to that another day maybe.
For sure.
In the meantime, we're out.
All right, man.
Peace.
Got it.